Hi, today's topic is about beauty standards and power and how the change of power has shifted the beauty standards. So yeah, uh, let's let's get it the video. So the other day I was bored. It was Sunday, and I was trying to see what face shape do I have because I'm still confused about it. But being obese is not a very good moment to know what kind of face shape do I have. But the thing is, I came across with this video that was really interesting about how our beauty standards are shifting, so much so that you can define the difference between classical and modern faces. And why, and the video in particular, I'm going to link it down below, spoke about how these differences came from changes in the face shape, in the angles, and how they want more angular, more imposing looks. And it sparked a huge of thinking. I was like, oh, I think I know why is this happening. And that's exactly why today's topic video is from. So you see, the thing is, has shifted, and it's not like, oh, the glass ceiling and all of that. No, power has actually shifted a long time ago when it came to the powers and who are in control of power. And people may want to believe that the power is still in the hands of men, but in my experience, there is a lot of power in the hands of women. And you might be thinking, how is this anything to do with modern faces versus classical faces? Well, the thing is, classical faces are more attractive to men, are more appealing to men, are more something that it will get you power through what? Well, how could you possibly get power in the past? Well, you had to marry well with a man who could protect you both physically and financially. Well, then if that is the case, the only way a woman can obtain power, then her goal should be appealing to man as much as possible. That makes sense, a humongous amount of sense. That's why, women try to be a certain shape, with a certain mannerisms, with a certain face structure, to appeal a good husband. And it makes sense. I mean, that's what you have to do to survive. Now, the difference is if you want to do it nowadays because you just want someone to be with, that's still valid. I mean, that's okay. Now, if you're doing it to abuse someone's feelings, no. Get yourself a job. Don't be a piece of shit. I'm sorry. But in the time period in which you can work, you shouldn't just try to abuse people's feelings. Okay? Good. Now, let's move on to the topic of the video. The thing is, now the power dynamics has shifted, and well, the thing is, a humongous amount of women hold power today. Now, you might be thinking, how is this anything to do with modern faces versus classical faces? Well, classical faces are more rounded, are more feminine, you know what I mean. They're just more with with a delicate shape, with delicate features and the mannerisms, and kind of like today's standards of beauty in Asian countries, because they have copy the classically European things. They also have their own beauty standards that they are recycling old beauty standards from Asia. Still, if you want to think of a classical feature, you have to look at a picture from the 1800s, 1900s, and or Sargent, that American painter, a Sargent painting. You can tell then, oh, that is a classical face. Now you want to think of a modern face, then you have to think more of the 70s, 80s, kind of fashion models with sharp angles and just like, with high cheekbones and very prominent, very young masculine features. And it makes sense because at that time period, that's when women started to gain a humongous amount of power. both financial and power in general. So what happens is now we don't just have to appeal to a man to gain power. Now we have to appeal women too. This is the thing. Not only because magazines want to seem fashionable and they want to seem progressive and we're inclusive and all that shit. No, 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 no. There's this subconscious idea that we need to survive. First, men have been failing in their duty of providing and things like that. There is a load of men that I'm now seeing, like red pill and a man needs to provide for a woman and a woman needs to be submissive. And it's just like, dude, I don't think you can provide for yourself. And even if you do, you're a prick, a selfish, entitled prick. No one is gonna want to be with you, and it's not because they're feminism. I don't think they would have wanted you back in the 19th century unless they had to, like really had to be with you. So it's not about that. It's more like nowadays we have to be respected by women too, not just men. We don't just need to gain the respect and admiration of a man. We need to also do it from our colleagues and co-workers and bosses. And in general, it's not a man, it's more often than not a woman, especially true in education system. And the thing is, women are really nasty to other women, and if they see you a little bit feminine, they will think you're dumb. They will look down on you and they will treat you as if you were dumber than the rest. And it has nothing to do with your actual intellect. It has everything to do how you look. Women are incredibly superficial and competitive in some things. And the unfortunate thing is, not just feminism, it's incredibly misogynistic in its core and essence. The attitude the women have towards other women, it's reflected in everyday culture. So it's no wonder that beauty standards have to change according to the times. It's not they have changed according to the progressive ideas, it's that they have changed with a balance of power. Now you have to look respectable for a female boss, for a female leader. And if you look feminine, she will bully you, she will harass you if she's not a well-balanced individual. People, if you look feminine, imagine this. How is like a suit for a corporation work, for a corporation job? It's not exactly the most structured, it's not flowy and delicate with lace and pink and ribbons. No, it's structured, professional, tight hair, chef, just like, masculine, because you have to look respectable. Sharp angles, sharp things, sharp, yeah! it's really masculine because you need to look respectable. That's the one thing you're told. You have to look sharp and respectable. That's pretty masculine. If you go to a business meeting with a puffy pink dress, I can assure you, no one will care what you say. You will be treated as the very least qualified individual in the room. And it's not because you're the least qualified person in the room, it's because you're wearing a pink puffy dress. It's not looking professional, it looks like a girl. And if you think men are culprit of this, women are dreadful about it. Women are bitches when it comes to dealing with other women. It takes really a very specific personality profile, very open-minded one, to just look at a feminine woman and just say, oh, she's not done. I have been told many times and I try to dress in a more, masculine. I try to dress in a more masculine way, but it's just like, people look at me and when I start saying, sometimes I speak something which is relatively dumb to me, and they say, oh, you're not as dumb as I thought you were. And I'm just like, if anything, my best friends are the ones who look at me at the beginning and didn't judge me, or at least they didn't seem to do so, and they respected me from the moment zero, from ground zero. it's so difficult to be respected by other women when you're feminine, because their own mothers tell them, oh, you want to be safe in this world, you need to be tough, and you need to be this, and you need to be that. And that internalized misogyny, and I hate to use something that this communist bunch of folk use, this lingo, they really have an internalized misogyny, so they cannot see femininity as a quality. They see it as a weakness. I cannot, men, the sheer amount of times I've been told in med school, to become a teacher, that sensitivity was a weakness. Like, what the fuck? Being too, what's the word you people use? Mauve? Mellow. Being too mellow, it's a weakness. You need to be tough, you need to be this. And I'm like, we're teaching to 6-year-olds, isn't it? Last time I checked. Why do you need to be dealing with 6-year-olds? Yes, you need to be tough. Like, yes, sir. The worst thing is, like, I didn't knew I had joined the Air Force. I mean, I wanted to, but come on. Really? I had no idea that sensitivity of it was a weakness, and it's seen as a weakness by most of professional women. So when you have to go to a meeting or anything, you have to look presentable, you have to look sharp, you have to look smart. And how do you look those parts? How do you do to look the part and to look smart? And you need to look masculine. You see? And that's why beauty standards have changed. It's because our duty as women is no longer to attract a man to reproduce and allow to have a marriage. It is to look smart in front of other women. It is to look respectable and, professional enough in front of other women. And given the fact that back in the 80s and the 70s, the women who had the most money to spend were usually not the housewives, were usually the businesswoman, the CEO, the one who was making money, basically feminists from the second wave. I think it's second wave? I don't remember, those type of businesswomen, strong and empowered. It made sense that the entirety of the industry, of the beauty industry, shifted towards that and subconscious feeling that we all have, that we need to be like a man or a cheap copy of a man to be safe. And we get into our mean-spirited face every time we go out into a very dark street. That's the very same face that we see usually in models. Because there is this subconscious idea of, I cannot fend for myself, so I'm gonna be scary. It's like, it's a really sad traumatic response. It's a trauma response. It's clearly that, but it's one of the many symptoms actually of a really traumatic thing. And you might be thinking, well, life has always been dangerous to women, it still is in many countries, it still is in many ways. Then why is it that now has shifted the beauty standard? Well, it's simple. Back in the day, making a surgery of any kind was incredibly dangerous. Even back in the 70s was still incredibly dangerous. Plastic surgery, to the degree and safety levels that we have today, and financial accessibility levels that we have today, to change things from the shape of our skull, the shape of our bones, or adding or taking pieces of something to make us look, the bigger jawline and a more pronounced and catty look and things like that, and remove those things. That kind of surgery, that dramatic kind of surgery, not only it took months of recovery, the recovery was brutal, the procedure was brutal. Everything was different. The industry of plastic surgery was different. So the accessibility of that kind of face to achieve that level of masculinity in a woman was a bit harder than it was a bit is an understatement. it was incredibly harder, and it was much more difficult to achieve that result without dying. So no one in their right mind would go to have a cheek implant or a change in the bone structure to look more sharp. So between a change in society, a change in the power dynamics, which beauty can be a source of power, and looks is always a source of power, and a change in the financial distribution, who earns how much money, who is the breadwinner, and therefore what are you going to spend on. I mean, if your only job is to have a husband, then you're going to try to be appealing to that husband. You're not going to try to be appealing to women. You don't give a flickering light about women. You just care what your husband is attracted to, and what he's attracted to, a classical face. Then you're going to try to be a classical woman. Now, when you have your own job and you're no longer interested in pleasing your husband, then your priority is pleasing your boss, who's most likely all your colleagues, and to be respected by them, either as a man or a woman. You don't have to look like a female. You have to look like a cheap copy of a man, essentially. Now, to those women who are privileged with beautiful cheekbones and beautiful jaws, that's the thing, they're a minority of the population for a reason, because for the longest of time, males have been selecting women who look a specific look. So those part of the population, they have this selective aspect in which a certain bone structure, which is more natural, more like feminine, more like, oh, it's too long. I'm gonna try to see how I'm gonna, wait, so when the file becomes too long, I don't know how I'm gonna do to pass it to the computer, so I'm gonna try to make it short. Well, the thing is, what was I talking? I was in the flow and I was just like, interrupted. Now, the thing is, I got it. It was about women. The woman who reproduced the most was the most classical features, had the most classical features, because they were capable of attracting a male, but not only a male, a man who was really wealthy, because men who are really wealthy can choose which partner they want, and they're going to pick one from a good family who's healthy and has a specific type of features that he finds pleasing. Duh, especially in a time period where they didn't have surgeries and things like that. I mean, they did, but a whole other topic. The thing is, those people reproduce the most and they have the most abundance of wealth, therefore those children were most likely to survive, both through famine, war and everything. So the vast majority of population nowadays don't fit the standard of modern looks and things, because very sharp, very angular features were not the most required thing for achieving a husband. I mean, there might be, I don't know, in some regions, but the vast majority of women I know, they look pretty classic. And it's not because I'm in a very wide and homogeneous region, no. Argentina is a mix of everything. We can see everything. And it's just like, most of people have a classical face. But the algorithm is going to push you for more modern aesthetic, more masculine, brooding look type of look, more, strong and empowered kind of look. And the vast majority of people are going to feel miserable with that look, because we are not like that. We don't fit that. And the worst thing is, the more classical you are, the worse you're going to be on the working environment, because people are going to judge you. Everyone. And if you're surrounded by men, it's most likely you will be listened to. And if you're surrounded by women, because women really look down upon other women. Especially the more feminine you look, the worse it gets. And that's why my friends are exactly the most non-judgmental people I've met. I could be wearing flowers in my hair, which I normally do when I'm allowed to. When I just don't have any pressing issues, or I don't have to look too sharp and serious. I could be wearing ribbons and flowers in my hair, and they will be fine with it, because they love me. And they're just like, yeah, this is Victoria. Well, I have to go. Bye. I have a student.